Surah Al-Baqarah verse 223 reads, "Your wives are like farmland for you, so approach them consensually as you please, and send forth something good for yourselves. Be mindful of Allah and know that you will meet Him, and give good news to the believers." Let us look at another translation of the verse. Your wives are your tilth, so you may go to your tilth as you please, but you should take care of your future and refrain from the displeasure of Allah. Know it well that one day you shall meet Him. Bear good tidings to the believers. Before I take you on a journey through time to show you the geography of the language and imagery used in this verse, let's see what the classical Islamic sources say. According to one narration, the verse was revealed because the Jews said that whoever approaches his wife from behind, his child will be cross-eyed. It is possible to find many variants of this in the corpus of narrations and hadiths. One narration about the reason for the verse is as follows.
He said, "The men of this part of Quraysh used to have sexual intercourse with their wives, while the latter lay down on their front. They enjoyed their wives from the front and back positions. When they migrated to Medina and married the women of the helpers, they tried to do with them what they were in the habit of doing in Mecca. But the women of the helpers objected, saying, 'This is something that we did not do before.' The talk spread until it reached the messenger of Allah. Allah, exalted is He, then revealed, 'Your women are a tilth for you, so go to your tilth as ye will.' He said, 'If you want, you can penetrate your wives from a back position or from a front position, or if you want from a kneeling down position.' He meant by this, penetrating their women's vaginas from any of these positions. He said, 'Go to your tilth as you will.'"
In another narration, the reason for the verse's descent is attributed to Umar. Accordingly, Umar went to Muhammad and said, "I have perished." When Muhammad asked him, "What has destroyed you?" he replied, "Tonight I changed my way. I loaded my mount backwards, and I approached my wife from behind." When Muhammad did not give him any answer, Allah sent the verse. It is such a verse that the accounts of its descent are very similar in concept and center on the position in sexual intercourse. On the other hand, these are topics that are discussed in the Jewish Talmud. For example, in the Talmudic section called Nedarim, or vows, sexual positions and types of intercourse are discussed, just as they are in the Quran and in the commentaries that attempt to explain the verse. Here, Rabbi Yohanan says that a man can do anything he wants with his wife, and the explanations of other rabbis are also included. Accordingly, if the man has intercourse standing up, he may have contractions, if he sits down, he may have spasms, or if she is upstairs and he is downstairs, he may have diarrhea. Now let's put all this aside and look at why the Quran compares women to fields and crops, and which geography this discourse belongs to. It was the book Goddess Myths that was the first step that made me realize the similarity of discourse in the Quran and to dig deeper. So I owe a debt of gratitude to its authors David Leeming and Jake Page, even if they could not have known about it. While reading their book, I learned that in Sumer and Babylon, the womb of Inanna, or Ishtar, as she was called in Babylon, was likened to a field, and this can be easily seen in the poetic discourses on the tablets. Inanna even says the following when talking about her sexual relations with her lover Dumuzi, Tammuz.
"He molded me with his fine hands. He irrigated my womb."
In other words, it was the goddess's womb that was the field. The womb from which the crops emerged, the field that fed the people by producing crops thanks to the fertilization of the god. So in the poetic narratives of Sumer and Babylon, the woman was the field, just as the Quran says. When I deepened my research to show how widespread this motif was among the Semites, I discovered more. In the hymn, The Courtship of Inanna and Dumuzi, let's look at the passages where there are similar motifs, that is, where the female womb is likened to a field.
Inanna spoke. "What I tell you, let the singer weave into song. What I tell you, let it flow from ear to mouth, let it pass from old to young. My vulva, the horn, the boat of heaven, is full of eagerness like the young moon. My untilled land lies fallow. As for me, Inanna, who will plow my vulva? Who will plow my high field? Who will plow my wet ground? As for me, the young woman, who will plow my vulva? Who will station the ox there? Who will plow my vulva?
As you know, vulva is the name given to the external genitalia of women. So the field in the poem is the womb of Inanna, a young woman. Later in the same hymn, Dumuzi adds, O Inanna, your breast is your field. For the breasts that give milk to the baby are a symbol of abundance, just like the field. But as you will see here and later, the female reproductive organ was often associated with the field by the Samaritans. In the poem, the goddess asks who will station the ox into her vulva. Ox is a word used for the male and the penis to indicate its power and fertilization. Look what Inanna says later in the same hymn.
Inanna sang, Make your milk sweet and thick, my bridegroom. My shepherd, I will drink your fresh milk. Wild bull Dumuzi, make your milk sweet and thick. I will drink your fresh milk. Let the milk of the goat flow in my sheepfold. Fill my holy churn with honey cheese. Lord Dumuzi, I will drink your fresh milk. My husband, I will guard my sheepfold for you. I will watch over your house of life, the storehouse, the shining, quivering place which delights Sumer, the house which decides the fates of the land, the house which gives the breath of life to the people. I, the queen of the palace, will watch over your house.
As you can see in this part of the hymn, which describes the increase in fertility in nature through gods and goddesses, Inanna is waiting ready for intercourse, and Dumuzi's penis, which will bring abundance because it is full of sperm, is likened to a field. In other words, it is described as one field giving its crops to another, or sharing its fullness with her, and thus fertilizing her. In the last part of the hymn, Ninshubur, the faithful servant of the Uruk temple, takes Dumuzi to the sweet vulva of Inanna and says,
My queen, here is the choice of your heart. The king, your beloved bridegroom. May he spend long days in the sweetness of your holy loins. Give him a favorable and glorious reign. Grant him the king's throne, firm in its foundations. Grant him the shepherd's staff of judgment. Grant him the enduring crown with the radiant and noble diadem. From where the sun rises to where the sun sets, from north to south, from the upper sea to the lower sea, from the land of the hulupu tree to the land of the cedar. Let his shepherd's staff protect all of Sumer and Akkad. As the farmer, let him make the fields fertile. As the shepherd, let him make the sheepfolds multiply. Under his reign, let there be vegetation. Under his reign, let there be rich grain. Marshland may the fish and birds chatter. In the canebrake may the young and old reeds grow high. In the steppe may the deer and wild goats multiply. In the orchards may there be honey and wine. In the grasslands may the lettuce and cress grow high. In the palace may there be long life. May there be floodwater in the Tigris and Euphrates. The plants grow high on their banks and fill the meadows. May the lady of vegetation pile the grain in heaps and mounds. O my queen of heaven and earth, queen of all the universe, may he enjoy long days in the sweetness of your holy loins.
If you remember, earlier in the hymn, Inanna says, Who will plow my vulva? We can clearly see that the same analogy is used throughout the entire hymn. In this last part of the hymn, Inanna's womb appears before us as a sweet field yielding crops. The one who will approach her, that is, fertilize and plow her, is her lover Dumuzi. Now let us look at the poem Inanna sings to glorify her vulva.
Inanna spoke, What I tell you, let the singer weave into song. What I tell you, let it flow from ear to mouth. Let it pass from old to young. My vulva, the horn, the boat of heaven, is full of eagerness like the young moon. My untilled land lies fallow. For me, Inanna, who will plow my vulva? Who will plow my high field? Who will plow my wet ground? As for me, the young woman, who will plow my vulva? Who will station the ox there? Who will plow my vulva?
Dumuzi replied, Great lady, the king will plow your vulva. I, Dumuzi the king, will plow your vulva.
Then plow my vulva, man of my heart. Plow my vulva.
In other words, the woman's vagina was again the field, and the man was again the ox to plow it. Look at what is written in the Amarna letters, dated circa 1400 BC, in a text from Byblos. My field is likened to a woman without a husband, because it is not plowed. In other words, she compares the woman's field to the womb of a virgin woman, and says unfertilized, to refer to the fact that the seeds have not yet been planted or touched. According to some researchers, it is also possible that this discourse is a sexual metaphor. That is, the field the woman is talking about is actually her own vulva. Another example of the association of women with the field is the Sumerian priestesses called Lukur. These priestesses, who were forbidden to bear children, were referred to as Naditu in Akkadian. Naditu was a feminine noun derived from the word nadu, meaning to leave the field fallow. The likening of women to fields is also found in the Jewish Talmud. The Mishnah, the first part of the Talmud, dates back to the 5th century BC and was written down in the 3rd century AD. The second chapter of the Mishnah, the Nashim or women section, is called Ketubah, which means marriage contract. It deals with issues related to marriage. The oldest extant Ketubah text dates from around 440 BC. In other words, they date before Islam. In the Mishnah Ketubah, when discussing sexual intercourse with women, it is said twice that your field was flooded, and the female womb is compared to a field. The first discourse is about the bride who has no physical signs of virginity and says to her husband, "After you betrothed me, I have been raped, and your field has been ruined by a flood." So the woman who did not bleed from her vagina during the nuptial act is talking about being raped. And by saying, "Your field has been ruined by a flood," she is saying that someone else had intercourse with her. Because the Talmud has adopted this image, it depicts a man whose wife has been raped as a man whose field has been flooded. In fact, if the woman is unable to perform the wedding due to menstruation or illness, the man is again referred to as someone whose field is flooded. Thus, in Jewish tradition, a woman's uterus is likened to a field. Considering the interaction between Jews and Muslims, the geography in which the Quran originated, and the vocabulary of the Quran, it is not unlikely that the parable of the field was borrowed from the Jews. This is because there are many motifs from the Talmud and Midrash that have found their way into the Quranic verses. On the other hand, even if this metaphor was not inherited through the Jews, I have shown with many examples that in the pre-Islamic ancient Near East, women were already compared to a field. Obviously, the peoples of the region inherited, adopted, and used this metaphor. Therefore, this verse did not originate from a god, but from a geography that bears the traces of Sumerian Babylonian culture, a geography where women, who are associated with fertility, were viewed as fields to be plowed and watered, and from hands that were influenced by the language used in the legends of these regions. When I show such historical evidence, some people say, "According to you, Muhammad is an astrologer, a scientist, a Sumerologist, a poet, and a historian." People who are sarcastic using such words are ignorant of what is called collective culture. A society inherits, in one way or another, the narratives and beliefs of people who lived hundreds of years before it. Sometimes it keeps them alive as they are, and sometimes it adapts them to its own culture. Therefore, it is quite normal for a lot of information, true or false, or the myths of ancient peoples to find their way into the Torah, the Bible, the Quran, or other books. Moreover, since many of them were written by clerics who considered their religion to be the right one, it is much easier for them to stand the test of time and survive. On the other hand, there is no evidence that anyone with the title Muhammad sat down and wrote the Quran alone. It is also possible that it was the work of many hands.